After months of speculation, it's finally happened. On the wet and rainy steps of Downing Street, Rishi Sunak finally announces the date of the general election.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
And with things can only get better blasting out, the real question is for us, will things get better for young people?
Excuse me, kid, have you got a quick message for young people?
Yeah, hope for the future, reassurance and hope for young people.
But we went out to ask young people what their priorities are for the election and whether they trust the politicians that are running in this election.
Alright, first of all, what's your name and how old are you?
Reese, I'm 18.
Yeah. And what are your priorities going to be at the next election?
I would say my priorities is mainly to get more young people involved in politics, making sure that they use their vote and their vote is not a wasted vote, because I strongly believe that when it comes to elections, time is limited. And for young people, our time is very much limited to where we can push ourselves. We can't allow those in power to restrict us from using our voices. We are very much a vocal generation, and we need to use that vocality within, change within, not without.
Alright, so first of all, what are your names and how old are you?
I'm Natalia and I'm 17 years old. I'm Mania and I'm 18.
And what do you feel that politicians represent you?
I think the majority of House of Commons members are very old people, and the youngest is about 20-something. A lot of us here today at the event are about 16 to 24, and I feel like that's really not represented in politics currently. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, but realistically it comes to it and we're not able to actually be represented within Parliament.
No, I don't feel represented by the government because I think Tories and Labour are currently like the most predominant parties that we have, and I think that neither of them speak for anyone, because recently in recent events in the last 48 days I supported like a certain side of a debate, and because of that I've been labelled a radical youth, I've been labelled a terrorist supporter, and none of those things I am not any of those things. I want peace, I want to advocate peace, and yet the Labour Party, like Keir Starmer with his recent statement that people have the right to cut off the food of others, and Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, who I won't even go into because I'm probably don't want me to swear, they have taken it upon themselves to make the youth who are advocating for that look like evil people. And I can't sit there and vote for either of those people, because I don't want either of those people sitting in government. Because how can they represent me when they choose to demonise me in absolutely everything?
So, what would you say your priorities are for the next general election?
Number one, free school meals. I was listening to the Mayor of London, and he was talking about how he's thinking of doing this new programme for free school meals in primary schools. But then that really intrigues me, because being from a family that's from immigrants and having to be refugeed out their countries, it makes sense that people who are underprivileged in society today have that opportunity to also eat with the children who are much richer than them, and it gives them a sense of equality and things. So I feel like they should aim for that agenda. I really like that. And another thing is about talking to kids about taxes. Like, no one in high school knows about taxes. Like, what is that? That is so that's just nonsense. Okay, but they should be talking about how you survive in the world, what is the cost of living, how do you do your taxes, how do you build up your credit score, because some people don't even go to college, so how are they supposed to survive in a world when they have no knowledge of it? But yeah, them two things.
Thank you very much.
My name is Sean, and I'm 20 years old right now. I'm currently doing a gap year.
Nice. So do you feel that politicians listen to you as a young person?
It's not necessarily that I feel they don't listen, but I feel like obviously everyone has their own agenda, and politicians typically swerve towards their own agenda most of the time, which is probably why there's a bit of a disconnect with the youth and young people in general. So yeah.
And coming into the next election, what are your priorities, and what do you want to see politicians talking about?
The next election, I would actually like to see what is on their minds rather than what the agendas of the world are, because it's all good and well saying that, oh, we should focus on the cost of living on all of these things. They're obviously serious issues, but you need to remember that the people that you've placed in power also have their own initiatives that they have been trying to achieve. That's why they're in power. That's why they want to be in this position to actually be the one to say it rather than being the one it's said to. So I would rather see what are they actually trying to achieve by being in this role rather than what promises they're going to give out, because obviously promises are promises, but what's the promise when it's broken?
Great, thank you very much. Yeah. And do you think do you have trust in politicians, and do you think young people trust politicians?
Good question. I don't believe young people do trust politicians, because when we are encouraged to go out and vote for whatever party it may be, we feel like they lack responsibility when it comes down to young people. They draw us in for when they need us, but when our voice should truly be heard, they decide to throw us on the curb. I would say that I have trust in some politicians, because some politicians are there to serve the people when certain politicians are there to serve themselves.
Activist, I'm also an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and I work in and around the education sector.
And in terms of, look, we're close to an election,
yes.
We're getting there.
Yes.
What are your priorities, and what do you think young people's priorities are for the next election?
I think, one of the key priorities for me personally is representation.
Yeah.
And I think what young people need to really focus on, and what young people should expect, is an election process, and an election system that is representative of their views. And I think, what we need to do, and I'm talking about people who are in communities, living on estates, is really get involved by asking questions, really get involved by tapping in or joining, local meetings, that are put on by either your local councillor, your local MP, or even if it's a community organisation that does a lot of work around resources, building kind of like a better way of systems with young people and other particular areas as well. So I think that's really, really great to really get involved locally, because what we need to understand is that within this political process, as well as election coming up, especially with the mayoral elections next May, as well as, of course, this time next year we should have the general election. We really want to get young people informed. Information sharing is really key, is what I say to young people. Is the message I spread. Really get involved, get all the information that you have by local council, local organisations, and really build a really key consensus as to how you can have your voice shared.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
And this is just the beginning of the general election campaign here at Politics Relaxed, where we'll be covering everything that happens with interviews and hearing from young people themselves about what they care about for the general election. So make sure you subscribe, become a member today to get more involved before the next general election to get your voice heard.